I've got 6:01 p.m., Tuesday, June 20th. I'm going to call to order this meeting of our Liquor Control Board. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilor Oakley.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, so one regular item, the liquor control license application for Standing Stone Wines LLC. Would you like to introduce Jenny? You know what, we also have, oh, I shouldn't touch this. We can use one. Okay.
I'm pretty loud, so.
Okay, great. All right.
So good evening. Thank you for hearing this. This is a new second-class liquor license. And Lily Sickles is the owner. So she was just going to introduce a little bit about her business. So we're looking for approval.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I just spoke to you not too long ago and you generously approved my loan application. So I'm opening Standing Stone Wines. It's also going to feature a lot of local beers now. We've done a little change over, and so it's named after my tribe, Oneida, people of the Standing Stone. We'll donate every month to a different indigenous cause based on sales. We're going to mostly sell $10 to $20 bottles, but we'll have wine for every budget. We're also going to sell BIPOC, locally made LGBTQ goods and arts, plants, and maybe some cheese. And it's on the Rotary at 33 Main Street in Winooski.
Great, happy to see some quick progress here.
Yes, me
in
too.
regards to the application.
And the opening is August, September?
I'm hoping it all depends on the landlord's fit up, because I'm hoping to be ready to go as soon as they're ready to go. So my wish is by the end of the summer to be open.
Cool. Any questions from council?
No questions. Just be sure to connect with Downtown Winooski as a partner and board members. You know, owning your own property on the circle and making sure that you're asking for what support you need from them.
Okay, that sounds great.
Any questions or comments from members of the public? You can use chat or raise hand. I see a raised hand.
Go ahead, Sarah, if you have some comment for this item.
We can't hear. Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
Ooh, sorry, there we go.
Oh, I hear you now.
I didn't mean to hit it.
Okay, sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay, hearing no concern then, do I have a motion to approve this license application?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Aurora, second by Charlie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's the end of tonight's Liquor Control Board meeting agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bryn, second by Charlie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So now at 6:05, I will call to order our Winooski City Council meeting. Agenda review is up first. It was pointed out to me that perhaps if you saw an earlier version of the agenda, there was one item missing from consent, which was board and commission reappointments.
Right.
Do we have any concerns about adding that in? That's what is currently posted publicly, though, too.
No concerns.
No concern.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to public comment. This is an opportunity if you are a member of the public attending and want to speak to something not on this evening's agenda. Now would be your chance to do so. Please use the chat or raise hand. Okay. Seeing no public comment, we will move to tonight's consent agenda. We have our City Council and Liquor Control Board minutes from June 5th, the payroll warrant from May 28th to June 10, accounts payable June 15th, USDA Forest Service grant application to cover some tree scope for our Main Street revitalization project, the Wolfsgart Arrow event permit application, an event that's happened several times in Winooski. The contract to continue our summer and after-school rec programming with the Winooski School District, the board and commission reappointments, and the alternate appointment to the Board of Chittenden Solid Waste District. Any questions, concerns about tonight's consent agenda?
No.
Any public comment? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Charlie, second by Aurora. All those in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Motion carries. Thank you. We will do council reports. Aurora, would you like to begin?
Certainly. So on June 8th, we had a meeting of inclusion and belonging. Our focus for that meeting was on the stipend policy, which is being presented later on in this meeting. So I won't go into more detail there. Wait for that item. And on the 13th, we had a meeting of the inclusion, Safe, Healthy, Connected People meeting commission. And there we got an update from the SRO, the school resource officer, on kind of what he's been doing this past year. I know that is also kind of a further update on our Safe, Healthy, Connected People update. But he also talked about, which wasn't mentioned there, a public safety camp that's being run, and the different activities that they're going to bring this campers on, such as working with some of the folks at the Guard, working with some of park rangers, so just getting a really fun general idea of the different options for public safety field. So those are the two updates I have.
Thank you.
Thanks. The Airport Commission met the first Wednesday of the month. That was June 7th. Nothing to add by way of progress from May on the sound insulation work. They'll be reaching out to the city staff and to the community for input and more notifications as they get into the insulation for homes in our city. Right now, they're really focusing on the South Burlington area and are just very looking at the edges of the contour lines, the loudest contour lines right now. So the next meeting for that will be the first Wednesday, I believe, July 5th, next month. So nothing significant to report there. The Infrastructure Commission met last Thursday on the 15th. Sadly, we are losing quite a few people from the commission this time around, so we are saying farewell to Jason and to Brian and to Dallas, and we'll be seeking folks from the community to fill their vacancies. For that reason, we're going to take the month of July off and reconnect mid to late August, third Thursday in August at this point. Other things that we discovered with the new technology that Paul has acquired for the city, we probably will move forward with having hybrid meetings. We actually had pretty good attendance because of the hybrid option for this month, where folks would not have been able to make it home from work otherwise or to the meeting otherwise. So that seemed to make a big difference for folks. Once we get those vacancies filled, then we'll figure out voting for officer roles for the most part, filling those in. But we are retaining Emily and Michelle and looking very thankful, and Peter, and very thankful for them staying on for the seats. Otherwise, we went over the strategies and priorities that the council decided on in May, as well as the engagement scoping that we talked about in early June. And then some general questions about bike ped infrastructure, liaison to CCRPC, as well as electric bike share and updates on that. So that's that. The Chittenden Solid Waste District has its annual officer meeting election next Wednesday. We will actually be in their new offices, which are leased space from South Burlington Police Department. And that'll be the first time that we'll be meeting in that new space that they fit up, and should be pretty nice to all be together for that. So that's probably the most pivotal thing for that meeting next month, or next week, but yeah, that's it for now.
Thank you. Since our last meeting, hosted my monthly Winooski Housing Roundtable with local partner providers, primarily focused on exploring grant funding to bring more specific housing support capacity into the Winooski School District. Continued coordination of the training for tenants, working with the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, hoping to implement those in the month of July. I attended one of our Winooski Housing Authority senior building community listening meetings that we have been doing a round robin of, and wanted to share top concerns: sidewalk and road conditions, traffic safety, public safety, and improvement of internet access options. Planning Commission met and continued their discussion of a potential design review district to support historic preservation. I met with our zoning administrator and the commission chair following that meeting to discuss strategies and priorities, so that in the July meeting, we'll then roll that out to the commission what the priorities are going to be for that work plan for the year. And I think that's it for me. Yeah, their next meeting won't be until July, and same with Finance Commission. Charlie?
Yeah, I also went and met with some of our seniors at the 31 Spring residence. They're all kind of on the same page with their concerns: a lot of infrastructure, biped safety, and specifically striping. There was a lot of input about when are we going to be striping, when are we going to be painting, which seems to be right in the same vein. So, I'm looking forward to meeting with that group again and hoping to give them a little bit more updates on what we're doing. There was a lot more listening on my part versus talking in that meeting, which is the purpose. And the Housing Commission will be meeting in July. We're choosing a new meeting time, a new regular meeting time between either the last Monday or the last Tuesday of the month. I'll be meeting tomorrow with Robert Millar and Jasmine Hurley to compare notes regarding our strategies and priorities for the year, and then Jasmine's work plan that she's been working on. So I should have a better update in the coming meetings around where the commission is headed and what we're looking at. So, and that's it for me.
All right, thank you. City updates.
Great. 4 brief city updates for our end. So Juneteenth, the city of Winooski would like to thank downtown Winooski and everyone involved for another amazing Juneteenth event in Rotary Park that took place this past Sunday. Keep an eye out for downtown Winooski's other event announcements for Winooski Wednesday, French Heritage Day, which I think is coming up this weekend, and the Pride event. You can find that on downtownwinooski.org for more details. Boards and commission vacancies, we kind of talked about that, but City of Winooski is seeking engaged and dedicated residents to serve on our boards, commissions, and committees. Many of these positions have expiring terms ending this month. Current members may reapply. We did have some reappointments in the consent, and residents who aren't currently serving are welcome to apply. So please visit the news and update section on our website for that. And then grand list change and appraisal appeal. So as of June 7th, we completed an abstract of our 2023 municipal grand list. Change of appraisal notices will be mailed out to advise property owners that completed permitted work or other improvements that may have increased the value of their property. So keep an eye out for that. If you're interested in appealing the appraisal change, please submit a written letter to the city clerk's office before this Friday. So hopefully folks have seen those by now. Or call or set up an email with Jenny, the city clerk's office. And then finally, the Meyer Memorial Pool season has started and it's off to a great start. So just be sure to get your passes if you haven't yet, and check the schedule and programs at winooskivt.gov/pool. That's it.
Okay, thank you, John. Moving into our regular items. First up, we have an introduction to Scott LaValley, Howard Center Assistant Director of Outreach Crisis Support.
Bringing Scott over now.
Welcome, Scott.
Hello. Well, the first thing I have to say is you guys are really have your stuff together here. I've done a few of these, and this is by far the most efficient and coordinated one yet. So I just felt like I had to say that.
Thank you.
So I promised Elaine I would not take up a lot of time because I know you guys have a lot of important business. So essentially what I have is kind of like a little 3 to 5 minute like elevator presentation, just kind of as part of my introduction and some of the things that I hope to bring to the program. And so I want to start basically with, outreach, just putting a definition on it. It's an activity providing services to people kind of where they're at. And generally speaking, those people would not otherwise have access to those services. So we're trying to bring that, to them. Some of the core elements of outreach, these efforts have to be systematic, coordinated, comprehensive. For us, the approach is person-centered, trauma-informed and responsive, culturally responsive and informed, and the emphasis is on safety and harm reduction. So we try to do our best, and that's kind of where we start from, is safety and harm reduction, and then we kind of work back to the rest of it. So one of the other pieces of outreach that it seems hasn't been really an emphasis of this program would be promoting public awareness. So I know like each community, they have things in place to try and promote public awareness on certain things. But I also feel as part of the Howard Center, being the designated agency and kind of like the experts in, mental health and substance abuse and social service needs in the communities, that we can also provide that at a smaller scale through our outreach program, not necessarily a large scale at the Howard Center puts things on, like the big conference they had a couple months ago, and they do their spring series and stuff like that. Really kind of breaking it down and promoting public awareness through like public forums, workshops, either in person, via Zoom, being into anything you guys have going on that you think that we'd be able to bring some information in to be helpful. Specifically what we're looking at is the impact of child adversity that it can have on lifelong health outcomes, the significance of and what it means to be informed about trauma and to be responsive to the needs of individuals that experience trauma, and what it means to foster resilience in individuals, families, and communities. Those three things there are things that we would like to try and promote as far as bringing information to the communities in an effort to be more preventive and kind of lessen the necessity of crisis services. Even though we have the crisis service, that's part of what my job is, it would be nice if we could put a little more of that workload on the front end of things, and through public forums and workshops and stuff like that. Those are good examples of trying to be able to intervene and get some of those things out there before the crisis services are actually needed. And that's what I got.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, thank you. Oh,
You know, for those who don't know, the outreach team has been working with RPD for a number of years, since 2015. And I just want to say that, what's that?
Just define RPD.
Oh, police department, thanks. We have really appreciated that work. Every year we get data from our chief on, call responses and how helpful it is to the police officers to have that support. And I also hear it from community members too, so wanted to express our appreciation there. And I'm excited to hear about this new sort of outreach angle and potentially preventative items as we think about community engagement efforts. Hearing that your team is more than happy to come and share information at events. I think that's something that we could keep in mind in the future to extend invitations.
yeah, I think that's really the goal. And at first it might be mostly me doing it because I'm the one with the kind of free schedule. So, but that's also, that falls into my background. Providing information and presentations on adversity and resilience and how we work with people that have experienced trauma. And I know it's anyone that we interact with that's in some sort of crisis. Usually when we work backwards, we check all three of those boxes.
Yeah.
So putting an emphasis on those things, I think it's just nicer if we can, the more preventive we can be, the better, just for everyone. So really trying to capitalize on the relationship and be involved in trying to help communities, figure out ways that they can be more preventive for a lot of reasons. It's in everyone's best interest.
Thank you. Any questions from counselors?
I was a little curious, and I don't know if you have some additional material provided on this. In the worksheet we got, it talked about a newly launched embedded Vermont State Police Crisis Specialist Program and a potential forthcoming Family Crisis Response Program. I was just wondering if you could give like a brief sentence or two just about each of those programs as well, and if that's something we'll.
Yeah. So. Yep. So the crisis specialist is embedded with the Vermont State Police. He's out of the Winooski barracks. I would say his job is probably 75% outreach, 25% crisis kind of, and then that all changes. Today it could be one thing and tomorrow it's something different. Really that's a challenging position that requires, an emphasis on people being flexible. He is embedded with the state police. So I think he would have, some significant overlap and collaboration with the community outreach team. The potential to co-respond to things. From where I'm sitting, them co-responding is not a good thing. It means something really big is happening. So I'm kind of hoping that doesn't happen very often. And then the family crisis response is an effort. We had a SAMHSA grant, and then we just got another grant to help prolong the program because it's just a tough time to hire people right now. We feel like we're rebounding a little bit, but the family crisis response is to try and help families access the help without having to go to the emergency department. There's very often, this would be another item to put into like a public awareness campaign type, efforts would be, so often families go up to the ED, and a lot of times they're turned away because why ever they're there doesn't meet like the psychiatric criteria for being there. But they're desperate. They're not going up there just because, it's fun. They're desperate. They're looking for help. So the family crisis response, kind of the framework of it is like a licensed clinician, that's got a little bit of experience with families, and then a few what they call care managers to work with the family until they get connected to long-term services, to try and help them get some support, maybe develop some coping skills without accessing the ED unnecessarily. So certainly if a family's, there's a psychiatric crisis or someone's suicidal, any of those things, obviously we would encourage them to go to the ED. But there's a lot of those instances where the ED is just not going to be helpful, and it's a lot for a family to sit up there for hours and not be seen. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for the family. It's a strain on the system. It slows things down for everyone. So the goal and the emphasis of that family crisis response is to focus on, families that are struggling it doesn't even matter why, just for whatever reason they're struggling, to be connected longer than like a traditional crisis intervention, which is usually measured in moments. This would work with a family over the course of weeks, to try and, I guess, bridge that gap. Probably a few more sentences than what you're looking for, but that's kind of the idea of it. So we're still hiring for that, and really hoping to have it up and actually functional and running. By summer would have been ideal, but now we're kind of aiming for having everything kind of worked out by the time school starts back up again.
Thank you so much for those details. That's very helpful to know. And I know one thing that came up when we were doing some listening sessions with community members was like the struggle to even sometimes like get up to the ED. So just knowing that there might be other options, especially if folks feel that that's the only place they can go and it's really hard to get. So I'm excited to hear about that.
And this would be modeled very much like the outreach teams. They would come to the family if it's safe, right? That's kind of where we're at. So we want to remove all those barriers.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Just curious, what other Winooski-based organizations and groups you're connecting with and coordinating with beyond, the city council, police department?
So I met with Elaine and the police department a few weeks ago, which kind of set the stage for, I thought it'd be nice to come here and this is where I'm starting. It felt like a good place to start. That way, I think we'd be willing to go and provide information to any community organization that was interested in having that discussion, and we'll go from there. So just kind of taking a reevaluation of the work that we've been doing, and I know all programs need to kind of get shook up once in a while. And I think what the team's been doing since 2015 or 16 is very valuable, and we're just looking to kind of build on that.
Great, awesome.
So any organization, yeah. Thank you.
I think if you have the capacity for it, with our downtown Winooski events, Winooski Wednesdays, farmers markets, or whatever, I know those tend to be maybe a little after hours or on the weekend. I see you don't have weekend hours, but maybe Winooski Wednesday in the evenings or events elsewhere around the city, tabling at those events that are already planned and that groups are already coming to and attending could be a nice way to do some of the education side of things and outreach side of things that you were just talking about.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Are there any questions from members of the public? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Scott. It's great to meet you.
All right. All right, thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, let's move on to item B, introduction of draft updates to the Public Building Registry regulations.
Good evening.
Welcome, Chief.
How is everyone?
Good, how about you?
So it's been quite some time since we've updated the public building registry or the housing ordinances, so figured we would start with the easier one, which is chapter 17, which is really focused on how the public building registry, which used to be the landlord registry, functions as far as the requirement to be registered, how the inspection cycle works. So this chapter was pretty straightforward as far as updating. In your packet, it was included the kind of red line version. We have sat with the Housing Commission through chapter 17 and the housing chapter. So your next meeting, I will introduce that update to that one. That's a much bigger lift. It's kind of a red line of the current. We reformatted to kind of align with the other ordinances, and there was enough updating that it really just made sense to kind of redline what we currently have and present a new chapter. And I thought I would just touch on a couple, if folks want Paul to put it up, he can. You had it in your packet, so, there's,
If you're just trying to highlight, you can tell us what section
I'm
and
just
we
gonna
can
touch
look.
on a couple, I'm not gonna touch on everything that's redlined. There's a couple highlighted areas in there, in section 1702B. This is something I haven't quite figured out yet, and that's a requirement that all records, including inspection reports, records of complaints received and investigated, and all plans for inspections of public buildings shall be available for public inspection. We do not have a forward-facing software program where people can punch in an address. This is really manual intensive for us, and it requires, the reason I bring it up is our Volt and the street files. Every property here has a street file, so you can go to XYZ street and address and open the street file. But if you think about, we have years and years and years of documents. Some of our reports for some of the bigger buildings are 60, 70 pages. So we tend to generate a lot of paper. So it's kind of, I haven't figured it out yet. That's what we currently do. That's probably something that I would put pretty high on the list in the future of, there are several wants to know the history of the buildings, kind of where we're at with inspections. So again, that takes a lot of time. If someone comes in, we're trying to figure out, how far back they're trying to go, what exact information they're trying to get. We don't want to just tell everyone you got to do a public records request if it's something we can point them in the right direction, to kind of self-advocate, if you will.
The Firehouse software doesn't give you a way to pull this stuff together electronically?
So we can, but it's manual, right? It's not a forward-facing public
Right.
John Lottie can enter it. But certainly I can go into that, but at that point it becomes, how are we recovering staff time?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm saying, it's very,
Okay.
manual intensive, so, I'd rather, if you think about it, if we get 3 of those a week, that's 3 inspections we're not doing somewhere else. We're having to go back,
Okay.
and do that.
So with this tangent slightly, but the digitization of our documents, where is that all being stored and how is that being accessed?
So that's really early, and Eric's not with us unless he's online tonight, or I don't know the update.
Okay.
I know there are certainly efforts to digitize land records and, a lot of those pieces, that has not come as far as the public building registry.
Okay.
And there's certainly tons and tons of it in the vault, so. I'm sure we'll get there, I'm sure we're part of their plan, but I just wanted to call that out.
Okay.
Cause in here it says we need to do that, and, quite frankly, we don't do a great job at that. It's, you know, we're always kind of going back to, so it's a lot of work. The other piece I would call out is on page 5, and, this is, just get my bearings here. Section C in 1705 inspection requirements. Section C is if any building is exempt or excluded from our inspection program, that it would meet or exceed the duly adopted codes that we do. And in our case, it's the state of Vermont. The reason we say this is, you know, if there's HUD properties, or quite frankly, you know, properties run by housing authorities, their inspections or quality housing inspections often aren't at the level that we're doing, you know, life safety wise. And so there is a gap. It's pretty important that we maintain, you know, a level playing field. Yes, they are inspected, but are those inspections the same? And I would say to you they're not. And we want to make sure that they are across the board. Just because it's a 6-story building and it gets quality of housing inspections doesn't mean it's a level playing field for the duplex across the street. So we just wanted to kind of update that one. Page 6 of the same, or 1706 scheduling. Another highlighted section is D. This has to do with if someone's buying a property or transfer of ownership. These are out-of-cycle inspections for us. Oftentimes we've inspected a building and that inspection is 2 years old because we're in a 4-year cycle, and the finance company wants a more current inspection. So it is a special, it's a special trip, it's a special inspection for us, so we refer to those as out of cycle. Those tend to be pressurized because the home's often under contract. You know, the ordinance currently says we have up to 60 days to complete those, and I would contest, as I think Jenny would, oftentimes people expect those within days of calling us. So again, we're setting aside a life safety inspection to do an out-of-cycle inspection. So I haven't, you know, it's likely this won't change. I highlighted it because I don't have a great answer for it. Just calling it out that it is a pinch point for us. 1708 issuance of certificates of fitness. Again, these there's only like 3 more I'll call out. In the current ordinance, it says if it's 5 or less minor non-life-threatening violations, we'll issue a certificate of fitness. And what that has turned into is our staff, working with a tenant. A landlord thinks it's a minor issue, and for the tenant, it's a major issue. So, you know, a burner doesn't work on a stove. One of 4 burners doesn't work on a stove is a major issue for a tenant with a large family, where the landlord, it's a minor issue. So staff is, you know, trying to sort out, is it minor, is it major? So we redlined those 2 provisions, and it's simply, you're either compliant or you're not, to get their certificate of fitness, to take that piece out. Because again, you know, you're there and the property owner is pretty adamant that it's a minor issue, and again, the tenant's been a year with, you know, or if we're in a 4-year cycle, you know, a couple years with only part of their stove working or another element, you know, part of the house, that is major for them. And so we don't wanna be refereeing those, you're either compliant or you're not. And,
Are there not clear definitions on what a major life?
there's no way to do it, right? I would suggest, how do I declare what a major, we would not be doing justice to the tenants if I were to go through and say what's minor and what's major.
But it says non-life threatening in here. I would argue that that's a little clearer.
I mean, I would suggest it's not, because it doesn't stop there, right? I mean, it's a, maybe a better example is a bathroom fan doesn't work. For someone with an allergy or, thinking that the moisture is gonna create a, mold issue, that's a life-threatening issue for them. And the property owner is like, no, just open the window. So staff, again, there's lots of examples of we're trying to determine what that is, because the interpretation is much different. And it would be a long list for us to try to go through and make that interpretation. And I would suggest that it'd be very difficult to do justice to both sides of it. And again, why wouldn't we want them to be compliant? Why wouldn't we want that stuff fixed? It's in the code for a reason. Let's fix it.
Okay.
And, the landlord-tenant issues are usually because of those 5 minor things that, that's been interpreted as minor, and that continues to deteriorate the relationship. Again, making it harder for us to do our job.
Are there other municipalities that do it rather strictly, either non-compliant or compliant, rather than major, minor?
I haven't read it word for word. Burlington does have some provisions. They're structured much different. They have more people to spend time with the interpretation, the follow-ups. What happens if there's 6 minor? We're not afforded that luxury at this point.
So it wouldn't be worth modifying this to say, like, I guess the way it's kind of already written is for 5 or less minor, 5 or then, yeah, I guess I have similar questions that get into that a little bit more.
Let's sit with it.
Yep.
And I'll do some more research. Again, where I landed on it is, why wouldn't we want them compliant? It tends to side with the tenants. Quality of life issues is really what the minor stuff boils down to.
And fines wouldn't make a difference?
No, I mean, most of the time with the minor issues, the property owners are given 30 days for compliance. Another part of the changes here is, if they need more time than 30 days, conditional is issued for up to 1 year, but that's written and signed by both parties. So, I'm not gonna give a conditional permit to repair a bathroom fan. I think it's pretty reasonable for us to say in 30 days you should be able to fix a bathroom fan. Those sorts of things.
Sure. Yeah, I did some compliance in a previous career, and low-level penalties and short turnaround times, like 30 days, 60 days, depending on the violations, with follow-up seem to really work pretty well as far as gaining compliance and sustaining compliance. So that's why I ask about the penalty side of things.
Yeah, and what I would say with the follow-ups is, again, I'm trying to, I need to protect staff. I mean, we're at capacity. I wish I could tell you that we had tons of time. We're at capacity. I'd like to tell you that we were about at capacity, but we are at capacity. So follow-ups tend to take a lot of time to get rescheduled. It's often when we see that, the tenant hasn't been noticed, or the, the
Right.
re-inspection, that takes a lot of staff time. Kind of the lead into E, if you will, is in instances where landlords have not, they've got a schedule and they're a no-show, or they haven't noticed the tenants, we have the ability to fine them, charge them a fee for that inspection. Last week, I believe it was 2 or 3 appointments that there were no-shows.
Are there
but-
considerations for any language barriers?
No, it's mostly just about accountability.
Okay.
No as far
literacy
as
barriers?
us dealing with the property owners. Yeah, and, I would say where the language barrier comes in is a 48-hour notice, but we're usually pretty clear, and it's usually a new relationship where we see that start, and we're able to educate and get them the resources that they need, meaning the property owner communicating with the tenant. And after that, it's kind of an accountability thing. And I'm gonna be honest, there's some property owners that just still wanna put the key in the door and
Sure.
walk in.
I'll probably ask you more questions offline.
It's all good. I think as I referenced in 1709, issuance of conditional certificate of fitness, we would only issue a conditional. Again, this is our ability to follow up, and really, it leads to more non-compliance as we issue these, if we're not careful.
Yep.
So it's only done in instances where I know windows are 3 months out, or, like through COVID, we're still dealing with, supply chain issues and or availability of contractors, but there needs to be a limit. 2 years, we can't be saying you still can't get a contractor. I mean, we've got people that are doing this stuff in 30 days, and some that are still saying, I can't. So we're trying to tighten that up a bit. And as I said, Chapter 17, that's the little bit simpler one, if you will. We'll obviously spend some more time on the housing piece, but please reach out with other questions or comments.
My only non-content related recommendation is to not capitalize letters that are not acronyms. So just here and there, there's any, shall, only. It shouldn't be all caps for those.
And, for full disclosure, I have not sent this through Paul. He usually does our final editing
No
and
worries.
hasn't been through legal and that
Okay.
sort of thing till we get all the comments and that sort of thing.
And has Jasmine had a chance to look at this?
Jasmine is reviewing these.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and just a note on process, which is included in the cover sheet, but for public consumption, want to get general consensus or support from us before legal review. And then I would imagine we would hold off on a public hearing process until we get 9 and 17 in shape.
That's what we were hoping, is to kind of get through the introduction, comments, legal review, and then get a public hearing set for both. It makes sense to kind of carry these through together.
Okay.
And then that will lead to the fees. There'll be another update to the fee chapter once we get through these. Doesn't make sense to do that now.
Yeah.
And I always have an interest in data and statistics, so anything you can offer about compliance rates and any historic information you have about that would always be of interest to me.
If I ask, I have 2 questions.
Yep.
The first is on page 4, section 1704B. And it's just the first sentence in the new red line. It looked like, I was trying to interpret it, it looks like there are 2 separate thoughts, or are they the same? I was trying to figure out if the occupancy poster is that part of the certificate of fitness, or is that kind of separate?
So it is like their certificate of fitness. So in a place of occupancy, it is an occupancy poster that is signaling that said place of assembly is to code.
Okay.
Yep.
So
So
they're-
occupancy posters, for a place of assembly, you walk to the front door, it's very typical, you know, we'll go check occupancy load, how many people can legally be in said establishment. So we post that. You'd be surprised how many people that go to these establishments will look at that as part of
Yeah.
their own safety, which is great, right? I mean, they're advocating for themselves.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, that's helpful, that's very helpful. Especially those came up and shifted a bit with COVID, so I'm sure people are looking at even closer. The other one, and this might, again, end up, if it's just formatting, if that's part of my confusion, it's on back to page 7, 1708E. I think there might be a missing like closed parentheses, so I was trying to figure out, there shall be a fee for an additional inspection. And then there's a parentheses, and I was trying to figure out kind of where that ends.
yep, so other than there should be a close, you are correct.
Okay.
So what we're saying there's an additional fee, unless it meets the criteria of D. So there's no
Okay.
fee for the first follow-up,
Okay.
within 30 days, or with a written corrective action. But there is additional fees, if they don't show up for a scheduled inspection, have not provided 24-hour notice, and provided us a 24-hour notice, or notified the tenants as legally required.
Gotcha. Would there be additional fees for, and I might be answering my own question, so if they do show up to the first inspection, there are issues, you have a second inspection, either they don't show up for that, or they haven't fixed the issues and don't have any reason why, is there a fee then?
Yep, you'll see that, because when we get into the housing,
Gotcha.
so view this as leading up to trying to get in the door. Housing's gonna deal with once we get in the door. It's gonna be much more specific of, you know, we're looking at the bathroom fan, we're looking at X, Y, Z, and then, yes, it does explain in there what happens if you continue to be non-compliant.
Okay, perfect, thank you so much, those were the two questions I had.
Charlie, did you have anything?
Not at the time, at this time.
I'm good.
Are there any members of the public with question, comment? Do we feel we need to see this again, or that we are supportive enough to move it forward for legal review?
I thought the legal review was gonna be after all 3 chapters were done.
That's a good question. Are you waiting for both, or are you trying to advance them one at a time?
I would probably advance them together, because they do kind of lead into each other.
Okay.
But your comments are important, right? I mean, we want to make sure that, you know, this has been very well vetted through the Housing Commission. Yeah, so it just makes sense to kind of get them together and work with the legal team.
Well, let me know if any other
This is on
questions
for-
come up that we want to bring back later.
Sure, and this is on just for discussion.
Yeah. Is there anything else useful to you?
No, I think we're good, you know, as far as the data request, you know, anytime. I'm not sure how that, you know, I get it informs our, you know,
High level.
our updates, as far as, I just don't wanna go somewhere I shouldn't as far as collecting the data, cause, you know, is that truly the driver for updating? You know, do we need that data? Do you want that data to do these updates? Or is that something you're looking for us to kind of talk about further in our future kind of visits with you?
I think future, that's
Okay.
fine.
I just
And
wanted
high level,
clarity.
also fine, of course.
And then, given the next chapter is a complete red line, what's your thoughts on that presentation? As far as in front of council, is the expectation we're gonna kind of go through that whole chapter?
I don't want it to be that way.
Okay.
Can we,
That's why I'm
could we
asking.
maybe see that in it further in advance of the meeting?
Sure.
And then ideally, there would be some time for us to digest and maybe send some specific questions ahead of that. And then when we get it to a council meeting, it could be more of a like summary presentation like this.
Okay, so maybe the approach is we work one-on-one with some of your comments. And I'll call those out, try to call those out that evening.
I think
of,
that makes sense.
You know, that
Yeah.
I've addressed, or this is how we can or we can't, or this is how we would propose dealing with
Yeah,
X, Y, Z. Is that a
Yeah,
good approach?
that sounds good.
Okay,
And
I
then,
just wanted to make sure, because we could spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah.
and then if, there are any overlap, you can be like, multiple counselors are looking at this, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always open if, you probably have a lot of questions through that, and we're open to one-on-one time if you want to go on an inspection and see what, kind of why it's laid out the way it is, or why it says what it does, why it needs to function the way we're trying to get it to function. We're always open to that.
Is that one done already? Or is housing still sitting with it?
No, it's done, so I can get that out.
Yeah,
We just didn't want to, we weren't sure
right, yeah.
kind of what the approach should be, so
Yeah.
I'll get with John, and we'll try to get that out in the next week or two.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because we're gonna do.
July 17th is the next
July
meeting.
17th, so we'll get it out.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item for discussion approval, the Inclusion and Belonging Commission stipend policy.
Thank you,
Welcome back.
Counselor Hurd, whenever you want to weigh in. What we have here is a stipend pilot policy for the Inclusion and Belonging Commission, where we're just sort of spelling out, to be clear for the commission, on what aspects of their duties or their interest would be eligible for a stipend. So if you refer to that, we talked about meetings. Ideal Vermont, we have one of our members that attends those monthly meetings, as well as being involved in the hiring process. So this has been reviewed by the commission.
Could I back it up a little further, that we have always approved having stipends for this commission as a pilot. This is a weird timing and order of operations because we let the commission weigh in on the policy after, right? Like instead of approving this before and then giving them, so that's why this
You
seems
mean
weird.
after the budget was approved? After what?
They've been receiving a stipend since like they started, like that's been part of the grant.
Yes.
Right? And so this is related to the grant funding, but normally, in another scenario, we would have approved this policy right then and there. So that's why it might seem weird, but like we're already doing this stipend pilot.
Yeah. So this is really putting it specifically, and I think one other thing with this commission to remember is, well, I think exactly where to start. But, yeah, so this is a grant. This is all coming from a grant that our previous equity director,
The Winooski Community Challenge Grant?
yep, is coming from that. So it's not something that falls under the general fund, and currently doesn't. And the idea is to have this pilot for then the commission to make a recommendation of how pilots can then be, for the council then to decide how stipends for commissions might be used in the future. So it really is to get that recommendation. Is this a way to make government more accessible and doing it with the specific commission in mind too, because they kind of have the most expertise on kind of how that'll work. And then at the end of the pilot, get that recommendation to council. Council can then decide, like, is it going to be a regular budget item? Is it something that goes, like, what commissions would fall under such a policy, what wouldn't? So again, this is very much just to outline the pilot itself. And one of the other items with Inclusion and Belonging Commission specifically is they're a little bit outside of the traditional, intentionally, under their charter, a little outside of the traditional commission structure and leadership structure within, or the hierarchy within the city, to, in the acknowledgement that sometimes this work can't work under the systems that, you know, have inequities built into them. So there's part of that built into this as well. Hope that made sense.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Jenny, I wanted to ask about the breakdown in cost estimates. Like, I gather that not everyone is taking the stipend right now, but for example, in 23-24 estimates, if a full commission, how do you get to $3,000? Like, isn't a full commission 7 members?
With a full commission, we did have one of our former commissioners not take a stipend. Unfortunately, that person had to resign for personal reasons, but there was never a stipend for the one. The remaining 3 members do receive a stipend.
Yeah, but I'm asking why the estimate doesn't assume all 7 would take a stipend.
Because we haven't had a full board. So for fiscal ending 23 is what you're asking?
23-24.
23-24.
And the commission is 6 members total. It's not 7.
It's not, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
The others are 7. Thank you.
So it's the intention, yeah, to try and then have one be an ambassador to each, and then have the one, we do have 2 alternates, which are positions that have remained open.
If it was a full commission with 6 members and everyone drawing a stipend for a full year for 1 meeting a month, not 2 meetings a month, all-in cost would be $38.75.40, $3,875.40.
Thank you, Angela.
Sorry, I wasn't clear about your question, sorry.
That's why we have Angela here.
So, sorry, Angela, can you just, so that, nearly 3,900 would be for
1 meeting per month.
1 meeting per month, for 1 member?
For
all 6?
All 6.
For all 6. Thank you.
But I do know that most members are not attending just a single meeting a month. There's definitely on average 2 to 3, with some attending more than that, depending on their role in different initiatives.
Can I get more information on that? My understanding was there's alternating months, Inclusion and Belonging, and then your liaison spot.
So we haven't,
We have been paying stipends for interviews of commission members. There have been months where Inclusion and Belonging has met and the representative has attended their strategic vision area committee as well. There's just been a few other things where people have been looped in.
Yeah, because we did have a special meeting, I believe that was in January. Because of, well, there were some pressing items. As Angela said, we've had some interviews. I think that was 2 for the finance, and 2 for Inclusion and Belonging itself. And we did want to include that within this policy because one of the items of Inclusion and Belonging is to bring that representative voice, and having that voice as part of the interview process just seemed very important. Obviously, that's not happening for every single commission, and is kind of hard to predict. So I believe, as Lane highlighted to what Jenny has here, is a pretty good estimate with those considerations.
I'm a little bit uncomfortable with paying for the interviews. In my experience of participating in many applicant interviews, these are like 20-minute meetings with people, like $50 per. And I'm doing, for Winooski Valley Parks District, we have 5 applicants. Like, is that $250 under this policy? Were I, you know?
I think that is a conversation. I think it would be then letting commissioners know, like if that isn't something you want to include, the commissioners should know that that would be opting in without a stipend. And I think what happened in the past, I think we had some longer interviews, and what happened in the past too is that we didn't have a set policy, and it seemed unfair for a commission member who, you know, made time out of their day to attend an interview and then to suddenly be told, actually, that doesn't count for your stipend. So if that is something the council wants to consider, we then need to hold, one, you don't have those voices as part, you might not have those voices as part of those interviews. I guess that is the biggest thing. Yeah.
And all we were looking for, is just looking for a clear direction
Yeah.
and approval so that we're all on the same page. I do track an attendance sheet, so for each any meeting that anybody attends, and I'd be glad to forward that along. Each commissioner, you know, whether they were an ambassador or ideal, any meeting, I track the attendance sheet.
And I think part of that too is some of those meetings might be 3 hours. Some of those meetings, as I said, might be 20 minutes. So there's that too, where we're not tracking hours, we're tracking the number of meetings. So with that, again, idea, like, does it come out in the wash?
I think it is one thing to compensate these official commission meetings, Ideal Vermont. I think paying $50 for a 20 or 30-minute applicant interview is excessive, and that, I don't know. I feel like that kind of falls in the scope of you're stipending the already official meeting participation. There are these other opportunities to engage. I'm also not comfortable listing Winooski School District in here. We haven't spoken to them. I don't think we should include them in this for now. That should require further conversation, which we can have after their new superintendent starts.
Definitely. I think part of the intention there was, trying to balance that. Like, obviously, the city and school are separate municipalities. We also are holding that we have this, the equity audit where our residents are not seeing the city and school as separate. So that was very much, with the intent of if the school would agree on items like community events talking about the equity audit, if there are high level, pretty much only the superintendent positions where they would want feedback from the Inclusion and Belonging Commission, which is what happened.
Yeah, I get the sentiment behind it. I think we should, I would ask that we remove that though and table it for a future discussion with school folks.
And in addition to what Councilor Hurd mentioned, is we did have one of our commissioners who was interested in being on the superintendent search. So that was a small part of the conversation following what Councilor Hurd just mentioned.
Well, we should be at a minimum having, I'm trying to get a second one, but at a minimum having the joint meeting with the school board in the future, and, you know, doing an update on the equity audit work there. I think this is a space where we could come back and say, here's something that our commission suggested. They would like to be included in these types of events. You know, think about that, and if so, then we could potentially add it back in.
Yeah, I guess for me, I also was just curious on how much conversation or communication is happening in advance of, so obviously I attend a lot of meetings as well. I have 3 or 4 other engagements beside 2 council meetings a month. So is there a threshold to saying at some point, you know, you're volunteering beyond what is of within the specific city business?
I understand, and thank you for that. What I try to do was just present there's so many variables
Of course,
right
it's
now
really,
with
I'm
this
not saying
commission.
this is an easy task.
And I was just trying to come up with an amount that maybe is representative. I mean, we're close to that. We could fall under, you know, depending on how many members of our commission we have, if we have alternates.
So right now, just for clarification, you're estimating the 10,900, let's round up, to being on the high end of an estimate?
Yes.
Okay.
I would definitely say that, especially as you can see, compare what.
Based on FY '23.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay.
obviously the ideal would be that we have a full commission.
And so, right now, if I'm understanding this correctly, just to confirm what I'm reading here in the agenda, attachments, 10,000 from the Winooski Communities Challenge Grant would be covering this, and the remaining, again, assuming this is a high-end estimate, the remaining 900 would come from
The
additional.
general fund, possibly.
Okay.
or
Yeah,
redevelopment.
yeah, and that would probably be, not for any time. This
Yeah.
fiscal year would be a possibility next fiscal
I guess,
year.
my only thoughts are, in relation to the number of meetings and the relationship to, I guess, the key elements of the grant and the city business.
Charlie, do you have questions, comments?
I think for the sticker price, given our stated goals, I don't take any issue with what I'm being presented with right now. I hear your concerns about including the school board or the school district, about talking to them first, and I think that's valid. But fiscally, I think when we lift up people doing DEI work, we lift up everybody else by proxy. It might take a little bit of time, but paying people to be at those specific types of meetings sets a precedent to maybe paying other people for other type of volunteer work, and we're desperate for volunteers right now. So I see this as kind of like a standing of good faith on the part of the city and the council, continuing to pay these stipends. So that's where I'm at so far.
Yeah, and I can't help but think long-term about budget
Mhm.
and, what information would be needed at the end of FY '26 to justify a presumed budget request for FY '27.
Hi, I'm Siri.
So just thinking about that
Right.
side of things.
I understand. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I don't feel like this is a conservative estimate, though. Like, if we fill this body out in the next 2 years, it's going to be higher, and there are no interviews included in 24, 25. And we always have interviews.
Right. I did not include them because I thought maybe we're gonna, optimism, that we're gonna have a full commission wanting to be reappointed. So we have our 1-year term and we have our 2-year terms.
But aren't we talking about also paying them to sit in on interviews for the commissions they liaise to?
Yes.
We're definitely never gonna have not that happening.
Elaine had texted me prior to tonight's meeting and also asked me to run some figures. The current grant also allows for the use of funding for childcare and translation services if needed, and she had me put together some numbers for those as well. It wasn't a significant number, but it would tap into some of those grant funds, further limiting their availability for stipends.
Is there a point at which, so presuming, just for discussion, this could be an underestimate, is there a point at which we would say we've maxed out our forecasted budget? What then?
So we do have, as part of the stipend pilot policy, that the commission itself will review it every 6 months. We, not at our previous meeting, but the meeting before, Jenny was able to provide a really detailed breakdown of, like, here's the budget for the grant, here's what we've used so far. So the commission itself wants to kind of take some of that responsibility on, of both being like, okay, we need to report back at the end of this pilot with information on, like, how does this actually work, as well as with making sure that they're using the budget in a way that makes sense and keeping an eye on it themselves around the stipends and around childcare and around language access.
So a little bit more self-governance.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And again, every 6 months, so hopefully with enough time, and could come up sooner if Jenny's like, oh, there's a concern, can we bring it up sooner?
In our commission, we involve the entire commission, so that's really important to all be on the same page. We all have the same information to put forth.
I'm willing to move this stipend approval forward. I think with the Communities Challenge Grant being $10,000, an estimate of approximately $900 over, it sounds like the commission, Inclusion and Belonging Commission, has some degree of regular check-ins with balance and preferred self-governance to help mitigate any overages. So I'd be comfortable with moving that forward as is.
Do you want to make a motion to move it forward with the removal of the
I'd entertain an
Winooski
amendment.
School District?
I'd entertain that amendment.
Would anyone like to second?
Second?
So we have a motion by Bryn, a second by Charlie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So we're just removing Winooski School District.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your work. Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, it was complicated, but there's just a lot
It's good work.
to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, wait, I didn't call for public comment. Is there any public comment, questions?
It's only two
Yeah.
people from staff in the attendance list right now.
Oh,
there.
that's a staff name. I'm sorry. Okay, let's move on to item D, our state treasurer's report.
I believe that John is present for this.
In
This
person.
is an annually required item from state statute that must be presented to council and signed off by the chair of the commission.
Thanks, Angela. So, good evening, City Council. I'm here to present the FY23 Internal Controls Checklist. So, the purpose, our internal control checklist is intended to function as a tool for evaluating the state of our systems of internal controls. Internal controls are a system of policies, procedures, reviews, segregation of duties, and other activities that are used to minimize the risk of asset loss, produce accurate financial statements, and conduct operations in an efficient and orderly manner. When going through our internal control checklist, the intent is to spot any controls that are missing or weak. It is important to do this before our auditors do. So we have reviewed this year's checklist, Angela and I believe Elaine as well, and made necessary updates. However, if you believe there are weaknesses now or in the future, please reach out. Any questions?
So this looks like the checklist itself comes from state statute, is that correct?
That's correct, yep. Then we fill it out.
When was the last time the statute was updated?
It's done annually, and then we just redid it last week.
I don't
So
know
the
the last
statute-
time that the state statute regarding this section was
Oh,
updated.
I'm sorry. I thought you were referring to the checklist.
So this is a document that is referenced. The actual checklist itself doesn't come from the statute. They've actually changed this a few different times. This is a much more streamlined version than one we were filling out, probably 8 or 9 years ago. That one used to be multiple pages.
Okay. And so the statutory language has not been updated in the last 2-3 years, I'm assuming?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Just
Check
wondering
it
if
out right
there's-
now.
Just wondering if there's best practices that they have recurring reviews of, you know, similar to how there's an annual review for us. Is there ever a recurring review of the statutory language?
It doesn't say. The statutory language is pretty brief. It just states that the town treasurer shall annually, on before June 30th, complete and provide to the select board a copy of the document.
High level, we obviously are working on the Lot 7D development project with Netty Realty, through a public-private partnership. We are in the pre-construction phase where we are paying for design services that they contract out. So, and we've been paying on invoices. We are currently at invoice requisition number 5. This should be our hopefully last design requisition invoice until we come to another agreement with them. So unfortunately, we do have to move some money around to make this payment. So that's why it's a 2-part agenda item. Do you want to talk about details of the funds?
Yeah, so we have exhausted all the reserve funds that are available in the on-street parking fund, and we cannot touch the Cascades Garage Parking Fund. It has pledges against it for the TIF district until the expiration of that debt. So we need some additional funds in order to remit this invoice. We have always anticipated using community and economic development reserve money for this project to alleviate some of the need for borrowing. There is currently $421,000 available in the Community and Economic Development Fund, of which we are requesting just over $308,000 be authorized for use of reserves. We would transfer that money to the on-street meter fund for payment of this invoice.
Thank you. Questions from council?
Is there any do we get any financial, is there anything negative that happens to our balances or to our ratings or anything for moving this amount of money around?
No, nothing detrimental. This money is marked as restricted or assigned in our balance sheets because it is restricted by your trustee agreement for community and economic development.
Okay.
We believe that the development of a hotel and housing on this site meets that criteria.
I don't want to say it's an expected expense, but I assume that this is something that has been in the works?
This would go towards the overall $11.6 million cost, so this
Okay.
isn't unanticipated necessarily, it's just sooner. We were anticipating being able to draw this down out of the debt when we take it on. We're just paying it out of a different source, and using our internal funds versus the borrowing funds first.
Yeah, unfortunately, the more design phase we do, the less construction monies we have to actually build the project. So it's all, as Angela mentioned, part of that 11.6 million.
Gotcha.
So with money going towards design, does that modify what the borrowing will be?
No, we are only borrowing $9.1 million for this project, so we aren't able to decrease that number for this. We do need all of that in order to do construction phase.
Okay.
We did have some grants, but they're not as high necessarily, and any new grant sources are not able to defray that cost either. Those have to go towards overages initially.
Yeah, when you all reviewed the, back in December, when you were looking at sort of the cost of the overall project, this invoice was part of that worksheet that Nettie provided.
Any other questions? Would someone like to make a motion to approve use of the Community Development Fund balance?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bryn, second by Aurora. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Did you say aye?
I didn't. I'll abstain.
Okay. I will say aye then. Motion carries. Moving to item G, part 2, step 2.
Step 2, so now that you have authorized the transfer of those reserve funds for use for this, we're now actually asking for official authorization to cut them a check and give them money. This is essentially a warrant that would have normally appeared on your consent agenda, but because of the reserve, we've created a special warrant.
Any additional questions?
And just confirming that staff feel like our agreement is pretty shored up with the partners, and we don't have any concerns with this request.
No, this is an amended request, so John did work with Bill on the initial request. We went through it with a fine-tooth comb and came to an agreement on splitting the costs on a couple of the invoices and removing a spurious invoice that was actually not related to our project.
Thank you for your attention to detail.
Is there a motion to approve payment of the requisition?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bryn, second by Aurora. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstaining?
Abstain.
Any abstaining? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Let us invite Ray forward for the Safe, Healthy, Connected People update. Item H.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, welcome.
Sometimes the microphone on this is funky. Yeah, so happy to be here. Not too much specific to call out. I guess per usual, I would just ask if there's any questions on this item, but I think by and large it looked, like things are moving forward as expected and anticipated overall, and things that were not, I think we've discussed in the past. So I have to answer any questions that folks have, but yeah.
I think he was just saying there's nothing surprising or too complicated. Are there any questions from us about specific items?
I do have a question, and I don't know, Ray, if this is something you can answer, if this is more of a wider question. So I did see that there is an update to the regional dispatch, that it has been officially put on hold through 2025. And I'm just wondering what is going to happen to the funds in the FY24 budget that were specifically going to go towards, I guess, positions and costs related to this, related to the assumption that it was going to launch.
Chief Audie's coming up.
Yeah, I do not have the specific details. I'm not sure if Chief Audie or Angela, who is there.
They're both here, Ray.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so Elaine's the official delegate to that, but I did attend that meeting, and the board is they're asking the communities that have put that money in there to leave it through early 25. So there'll be a written agreement. There's still so many unknowns with the state bill of how Chittenden County will fare through the statewide study and kind of where this all goes. So they're not asking for any additional monies. They're going to continue to do official meetings as needed to keep that entity compliant, if you will. And the proposal was put forth that to keep that money there in case something does change at the state level and there's an opportunity, and then it would be refunded in early '25. There's a date specific that if something doesn't change by then, that money would be refunded to the communities.
Gotcha. What about there was a specific position being created under the police department, to do, I guess, the paperwork that the dispatchers are currently doing. That's under our budget.
So again, this really raises some questions internally, of what we do with dispatch. I don't mind telling you, PD would tell you they're pretty happy. They don't have a lot of concerns of what goes on. On the fire, I have some serious concerns with fire and EMS on how that transpires. Not because of our dispatchers, by virtue of the system. And what I mean by that is, just today, there's a emergency at the river, and rescue was called for a person in the water. Our call was for an unknown medical. They're very different. The other night, elevator emergency, it just seemed like a regular elevator emergency for us. A rescue is told that there's a woman in distress in the elevator. That's a big difference in how we respond. And those are constant disparities. And it's not our dispatchers. It's how we're doing business, that's going to different locations. So you're gonna hear pretty clearly from me that this is a big concern for Winooski as we continue to grow. I am super concerned for the safety of our residents, and I'm super concerned for my staff as this continues.
So I guess
with the disparities.
what I'm wondering specifically is we've set money aside with the assumption that dispatch was going to change. We have that money. What are we doing with that money? Like, can it go towards alleviating that? Can it go towards equity work? So we put additional money aside for this that didn't go into the regional dispatch folks.
I think that's a question we need Elaine to dig into.
Absolutely. I think
Okay.
our internal, number one, Elaine needs to be, leading that discussion, but our public safety teams need to be part of that.
Elaine and I already had started discussions about that.
Okay, that's mostly my question is how,
So we needed regional to kind of make this decision, and I think the state's, the direction the state is taking, kind of made that decision for the regional dispatch locally.
definitely. Okay, thank you for that clarification. I just, thinking too, like, how are we best supporting you all?
Mhm.
Are there funds that could be used to better do that, or better do the equity work? Because I know those were things that were discussed during the budget session that were put aside for the regional dispatch contingencies, so I appreciate that.
Finance side of things, so it sounds like there's funds already committed. Was the line item that was set aside for regional dispatch, is that in a combined fund with the other participating municipalities?
So our funding next year for regional dispatch is within the police department.
Okay.
So it's within the PD budget, is sitting in the professional services line item. Elaine and I were discussing how that funding would be reallocated. We obviously need some of it to go back to the salary line items to pay for dispatch for the year. So we're gonna do the calculations for how much of it needs to go there, what's the remaining number,
Okay.
and what is the best use of those funds to bridge. If there's anything that we need to address in the short term before the potential regionalization of dispatch, taking it out of that funding rather than allocating reserves. But there's a lot of potential. We haven't started narrowing it down yet. We just know that we do need to do a budget adjustment.
Okay, and for the funds that we've already contributed?
Those were reserve requests that
Okay.
went to,
They've been paid.
that have been paid.
So, related to those reserves that we've already been paid that we've already contributed to the effort? Is that sitting in like an escrow?
So it's in the account of that municipality, Regional Dispatch, which is a separate municipality.
Okay,
And the agreement is all parties are gonna leave that money in there.
Okay.
All the communities, I
Yep.
believe that were at that meeting.
is
So
it interest bearing?
that, we would have to get that info for you.
Is
Of
Town of
what the-
Williston the one administering? I can reach out to the finance director over there and work
Okay.
with her on a pretty consistent basis and see if it's gonna be an interest-bearing account.
Okay, it feels like a lost opportunity if we know that volume, that amount
She's
of money.
pretty on top of it, so
Yeah.
I can't imagine that they
Okay.
wouldn't take that opportunity for the, a year delay to
Okay,
earn some funding.
it would be great to have that confirmed.
The other thing I was trying to remember.
And something that may need to wait for Elaine to get back, I had some questions about asset forfeiture. And Chief Ebert's not here to speak to that, so if we can.
Anything in particular about asset forfeiture? I do administer the accounts.
I had some questions, it was, for Elaine, I had,
Do you have an email going on that already?
yeah, you're CC'd on
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I'll follow up on that.
So Chief, Hebert had asked for a K-9 unit, that didn't come through for various reasons. Council had seen some additional requests for some infrastructure upgrades to the facilities. And I had wondered, could the asset forfeiture funds contribute to some of those facility improvement requests, in absence of the line items that were requested but not fulfilled? And, Elaine said that there were some other requests that were going to be made by staff or priorities.
Potentially, and asset forfeiture has some specific requirements on it. It can only be used to supplement, not supplant, so we can't use it for anything that's just a rehab. It would have to be something that is new that we do not already have.
So like a toilet?
Yeah, the bathroom would be supplemental,
So that's
not
what I was
supplanting.
thinking.
But like they're redoing the floor down there right now, we couldn't use it for that. So there's that delineation. We also do use asset forfeiture money in criminal investigations, and it's been supporting a lot of the additional training that we've been sending the leadership and specialized training for the officers for quite some time.
I thought there was a healthy line item for training.
It's not nearly enough for the full slate of officers that we have. There's 16 officers on the roster. I think it's actually down to 15 now. If we divided that evenly, they'd each get like one training, and
Gotcha.
not including any of the normal use of force, firearms, certifications, those
Yeah,
sorts of things.
I mainly was interested in advancing the facility
Mhm.
request to install a toilet that doesn't currently exist.
Yeah, and it is a pretty healthy fund when we have a number of claims that are still pending coming from the DOJ, from the DEA work that was done. Unfortunately, because we no longer have an officer that works directly with DEA, that has kind of dried up, but we have a pretty healthy balance in that fund at this point.
Yeah. That's what I have for the moment.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Moving on to item I, our World Refugee Day resolution. So Winooski has been joining the worldwide recognition of June 20th as World Refugee Day for more years than I've been involved. So we're looking to put forward that resolution again to celebrate and honor refugees living in our community, and also in support of the service providers here in Vermont that are working with these in our communities with residents. Any questions or comments? Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, second by Aurora. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We have reached the end of our regular agenda, we have warned an executive session pursuant to State Statute Section 313, exempting from public inspection contracts for the Lot 70 development and settlement agreements discussion. I am looking for a motion to find that we should have this discussion in executive session, as having it in open would put the city at a disadvantage.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And a second motion to enter executive session, inviting John Rauscher, Angela Aldieri, and our attorney Bob DePalma.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bryn, second by Charlie. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So we will enter, sorry.
It's okay. Slow tonight, apparently. Just
I think I hear it,
a
but.
couple seconds late.
So we will enter into executive session now. This is the only item of business that we will discuss. Nothing else will be discussed. We will not be taking any action this evening, and will reconvene only to adjourn. Do you want to sit in here or go in the other room?
It's up to you all. I just have to bring Bob.